Keto and crime, keto and crime. We uncover the grime on keto and crime. Keto and crime, keto and crime. Now is the time for keto and crime.
Hey everyone, Tracy here from Keto and Crime. Thank you so much to every single one of my patrons and channel members. You make this possible. And you're one of the reasons I do this. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if I haven't said it before, thank you. I'll sing it. Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there with me and letting me geek out, not making fun of me like a lot of other people do, because I like weird stuff about crime and dark history. Thanks, everyone.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Keto and Crime. Today we've got a very interesting story for you. We've got the case of Carolyn Warmus. Most of you will know this as the Fatal Attraction Killer. The case that mimicked the 1987 movie Fatal Attraction with Ann Archer, Michael Douglas, and Glenn Close so closely it was spooky. Now, there is kind of a misconception that this was the murder that was based on. It's not. This actually happened 2 years after the movie came out. But because of so many similarities, ones that I will point out as we go along, it's been coined the Fatal Attraction Killer. But it's very interesting, and it's one of those things that just makes you go, But before we get started, a huge shout out to my patrons and my channel members. Thank you so much. I'm back. I had a series of incidents, both illness-wise, and then my keyboard went out on my computer, so I had to get a new keyboard. Had some sound issues, which is why I'm using the headphones right now instead of my normal mic. And just some things like that that prevented me from live streaming and doing some other things that I would normally do. But I'm back. Got it all worked out. And we're back to have some fun. So thank you so much for hanging in there with me. I owe you all so much. I love you all. And let's dive in to the Fatal Attraction Killer, Carolyn Warmus. Carolyn Warmus was born in 1964 in Troy, Michigan, growing up in the affluent Detroit suburb of Birmingham. Her father was Thomas Warmus, her mother Elizabeth Warmus. Her father was wealthy. Her father started an insurance company, which immediately became the American Way Insurance Company of Southfield. In 1989, which is when the murder happened, the Thomas family was estimated to be worth $150 million. Now, if you put that in today's numbers, we're talking multi-millionaire, probably billionaire. Not quite, Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, but up there. And he owned 8 jets, 2 yachts, estates both in Michigan, Florida, Arizona, New York, and they had 15 cars. So he wasn't doing too badly. So as you can imagine, she grew up in a very affluent house where she got pretty much anything that she wanted. And her 2 younger siblings were treated very well. Now, her parents did divorce in 1972, and she ended up living with her mother and 2 siblings. She attended 𝐲𝐚𝐬𝐸 High School in Birmingham, Michigan. And in 1981, she enrolled at the University of Michigan. By all accounts, Carolyn was bright, vivacious, sweet, a real go-getter by anyone that knew her in high school or knew her family. She was not considered dangerous or obsessive in any way, shape, or form until she got to the University of Michigan, where she became involved with a gentleman that wanted to remain nameless, so we're just going to refer to him as her college boyfriend. she got involved with him. Now, he was already engaged. He was already engaged to another girl and was just kind of playing on the side with Carolyn just a little bit. And they had a very passionate 2 to 3 year relationship, but according to him, she knew the rule that he was going to marry his fiancée. She was going to, be satisfied with being, I think they call it a side piece now. And, yeah, but she became quite obsessed. She became obsessed with the fact that she wanted to be his one and only, and began doing everything in her power to make that happen. And the result was a restraining order filed by him on her. So we can see that something kind of triggered in her. Maybe, well, first of all, they never leave their wives, their husbands, their girlfriends. Don't get involved with somebody that's already involved. I've heard so many people tell me, well, God brought us to... No, I'm an atheist. Well, first of all, I'm an atheist. That doesn't hold water with me. But even if I was a Christian, God's not going to bring you somebody that's already attached to someone else. Just not going to happen in the scheme of things. So, yeah, they never leave. So don't put yourself through that. But she did, and he did, and they ended up having a restraining order. She did end up graduating, ironically, with a degree in psychology from the University of Michigan, and then she moved to New York City, where she enrolled at the very prestigious Columbia University Teachers College, earning a master's degree in elementary education with a specialty in computer science for early learners. And there she dated other people. They often talked that she was a little obsessive, kind of wanted what she wanted, and was not going to be spurned. I suppose she kind of got jilted by what happened in Michigan, so she was going to not allow that to affect future relationships. After graduating from Columbia, she was able to land a job in 1987 at Greenville Elementary in Scarsdale, New York. Now, Scarsdale, New York is upstate New York. It's in the Yonkers, Bedford area. It's in between New York City and Connecticut. A very affluent area. I couldn't afford to live there. Let's just put it there. And she met Paul Solomon, a very successful 5th grade teacher who was already settled in a condo in the local area with his wife, Betty Jeanne, and their daughter, Kristan. Now, just like the movie Fatal Attraction, you had Glenn Close's character, Alex Forrest, who is a very successful career woman, highly educated, a book editor. Now you have a highly educated master's degree teacher now meeting a seemingly happily married, successful career man, Paul Solomon, though he was no Michael Douglas. But Michael Douglas's character in the movie was a very successful attorney on his way up at his firm, married to his wife Beth, and had a young 6-year-old daughter. By all accounts, very, very happy. The same would hold true here for Paul Solomon, at least on face. Happily married to his wife Betty Jeanne, who worked as an account manager or in sales most of her life. Very successful career woman herself, and their daughter Kristan, who is a little bit older than the child in the movie, but seemingly very happy. However, if you dig into Paul Solomon's past, you will see that he had a history of catting around on his wife. So, not happily married, at least on what we would consider happily married. So, not exactly the same as the movie, but very, very similar. And of course, there's immediate attraction between Paul and Carolyn, and eventually they begin an affair, which lasts about 18 months. And even though they see each other several times a week, anytime that they can, Carolyn is becoming quite obsessed with Paul and wants more. But as I said earlier, they're not going to, they never leave their wives. Just put it that way. According to Carolyn, and I have seen a lot of interviews with her, and she comes off as a very intelligent, nice person, but her history of obsessive behavior leads me to believe that she's very good at putting on an act. I don't want to call anybody a sociopath or I don't think that's the case, but I do think she's good at putting on a face, and I'll drop a few clips of her interview here.
Year-old woman living in Manhattan. In today's day and age, they call it hooking up.
Among the many men in her life was Paul Solomon, an older fellow teacher Carolyn says hit on her soon after they began working together.
Paul Solomon approached me and said a lot of the teachers were getting together to go to a local restaurant bar, and did I want to go? And I said sure. And the only person who showed up was Paul Solomon.
A married man with a teenage daughter and a reputation as a serial womanizer.
Having relations with colleagues, school teachers, other people.
But Carolyn claims she didn't find out until it was too late.
I was already dating him, and that was certainly a huge mistake by me to continue dating him and to not have ended it right then and there.
Why?
Now, because of its similarity to the movie, this murder has spawned a lot of television shows, a lot of true crime dramas, a couple of made-for-TV movies, and in every single one of them, they portray Carolyn Warmus as this sex-forward kind of Samantha from Sex and the City meets 𝐿𝐸𝐿𝐈's character in Fatal Attraction. She doesn't come off as that in those interviews, as you can see, but I mean, there's something, I think, simmering just under the surface. Now, I don't think either of them were innocent in this case. Paul was certainly not innocent. But based on the reports of what happened with her, boyfriend back in college and other relationships she had, I lead to believe there was something that could trigger her off very, very easily. And just like Alex Forrest, or 𝐿𝐸𝐿's character, did in Fatal Attraction, Carolyn began to familiarize herself with the family, whereas, Alex Forrest comes to the Gallagher's home pretending to want to buy the house, the apartment, to find out where they're going, get their new telephone number. With this, Carolyn becomes friends with Betty Jeanne and their daughter Kristan. She became kind of a surrogate aunt or big sister for Kristan and became very, very close. Now, for a while, Betty Jeanne was okay with this. She didn't think anything of it. It was just another teacher at the elementary school. They're teachers. They like kids. It wasn't anything like that. But soon, obsessive behaviors began happening. Calls where people would hang up, much like the movies. And Paul began getting scared. He didn't know what was going to happen. So it all kind of culminated in the evening of January 15th, 1989. Now, on this night, two very conflicting stories about what happened. But basically, at 11:42 p.m., police responded to a call at the Solomon's condo where Betty Jeanne was found, pistol whipped and shot 9 times at her back and her legs. And the first thing that investigators noted is that whomever did this hated Betty Jeanne. It's not like somebody came in to rob the place and shot her. They deliberately made her suffer and shot her. So whomever did it really hated this woman and wanted this woman out of the way. So that was standard. But, of course, as usually happens with these cases, they immediately turn their eyes toward the spouse. Anytime a spouse dies, the surviving spouse is usually the one that is the person of interest. And so they immediately began investigating Paul. And this is the story that he told. He said that he was meeting some friends at a bowling alley near Yonkers, and did show up for just a few minutes with his bowling ball, but left immediately afterwards. He instead met Carolyn at a Holiday Inn restaurant near Yonkers, known as the Treetop Lounge. A lot of Holiday Inns at the time had restaurants in them. Yes, I'm old. And they proceeded to have drinks and dinner, stayed a couple of hours. They left the lounge and they went out to her car and then had relations. And this is the story that Solomon, so he admitted right away to having an affair and having a liaison with Carolyn Warmus that very night. Now, Paul was about 17 years older than Carolyn. So, she was 23, 24. He was in his late 30s, early 40s. So, and was known as kind of a man that catted around. So the police weren't at all shocked to hear this. And then he said after he went home, and that's when he found his wife's body. According to Carolyn, he was late getting to their meeting, but other than that, that was exactly what happened. So they both told very similar story. And the entire time, for about a year after this, they really honed in on Paul Solomon as their person of interest. He continued to see Carolyn for a little while. According to her, he was pursuing her. He was obsessed with her. He was calling her. He was telling him how the police were ruining his life and how they really thought he killed his wife. And was pursuing her, and then all of a sudden just cut it off. Now, his story is he broke up with her immediately because he immediately suspected her because of all the stuff that had been going down, even though he was still seeing her. And immediately broke it off and began seeing another teacher in the area, Barbara Baller. Now, this is where you have to believe two sketchy individuals, Warmus versus Solomon. In Solomon's words, Carolyn was obsessed with him. She was following him. She even followed him and Barbara to Puerto Rico on a vacation and attempted to liaison with him there. According to Warmus, Paul was calling her. He called her. He invited her to Puerto Rico. And then when she got there, he was there with another woman. And, of course, some shenanigans induced. But what really got police suspicions of Paul Solomon onto Carolyn Warmus was the absence of a murder weapon. Basically, they had reports from a local gun shop owner that Warmus had obtained a .25 caliber Beretta pistol with a silencer shortly before the murder. Yonkers detective Richard Constantino checked calls made from Warmus's home phone on the night of January 15th, and he discovered she made a call at about 3 o'clock to Ray's Sports Shop in North Plainfield, New Jersey. Store records indicated that there was only one female that purchased a 25 caliber ammunition that same day, and that woman was named 𝐲𝐚𝐬 from Long Island. Now, after talking to 𝐶𝐚, they realized that she had reported her license stolen. And while she had been employed at a summer job that summer, because school's out in the summer, lots of teachers work second jobs, and so she worked at a local summer spot with Warmus and had reported her driver's license lost or stolen. And because they were very similar, blonde hair, similar build, similar weight, they now suspected that Warmus had purchased the ammunition using Caddy's ID. And from that point on, she became their main person of interest. Now, the prosecution's main witness, after she was indicted February 2nd, 1990, and was charged with second-degree murder and second-degree criminal possession of a weapon, her trial began January 14th, 1991. The prosecution's star witness was Paul Solomon himself, who had received immunity in return for his testimony. Now, I want to say this up front. Solomon had taken a huge life insurance policy out on his wife not long before she was murdered. I think that's important. And just lead to believe that not everything is clean cut. When I first started investigating this case, I really thought that this was clean cut. She was a Glenn Close, bunny boiler kind of thing from Fatal Attraction, but not so much. I think Paul was just as manipulative and just as cunning as she is. Now, whether or not Paul actually killed his wife, I'm of the opinion that maybe he manipulated her a little bit, because I don't think he wanted to be in this marriage, but like a lot of people don't want a divorce. Kind of that's cheaper to keep her kind of mentality. And so my theory on this case is that maybe he didn't out and out plan the murder of his wife, but I think he may have manipulated Warmus into taking care of it for him. Just my opinion. But anyway, he did receive immunity and a huge life insurance settlement as a result. But he spoke about how he met Carolyn and then how she became progressively more unstable, wanting to be his wife, wanting him to leave his wife, and then how he became progressively more scared of her, even though he continued to see her, and how she threatened suicide when he tried to break up with her once, just like Glenn Close in the movie. But the defense attorney, Warmus's attorney by the name of David Lewis, also ascertained that there was a tie between Solomon and the gun seller, who was also a private investigator that Solomon had used in the past, and that the things between Solomon and the gun store owner were a little sketchy. The gun store owner was also a private investigator, like I said, that Solomon had used, so there was some contention on the defense's part that maybe they had set this whole thing up. Kind of like I ascertained that maybe she was manipulated into doing this, but he was out and out contending that, Solomon did the deed himself. However, due to the evidence presented, it took the jury 12 days to deliberate, and they became deadlocked at 8-4 in favor of conviction, but you have to have a unanimous decision. And so a mistrial was declared April 27th, 1991, in the first trial. January 1992, the second trial began, in which all the same evidence was presented with the inclusion of a bloody cashmere glove that had supposedly belonged to Warmus that was photographed and removed from the crime scene. The defense tried to get this evidence thrown out, contending that Solomon was trying to frame Warmus. But in the end, the same judge that presented over the first trial, Judge John Carey, did allow it to be presented. And after the trial, the jury only deliberated 6 days before they returned a guilty verdict for second-degree murder and guilty verdict for second-degree criminal possession of a weapon. And the judge then sentenced her to 25 years to life in prison for the murder and 5 to 15 years for the gun charge. Warmus broke down in the courtroom, asserting that she had been framed, that she was manipulated, that she did not kill Betty Jeanne. She was incarcerated at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women in upstate New York. She was not a model prisoner. She had Tier 3 and Tier 4 misconduct allegations against her. She was denied parole 3 times and was finally granted in June of 2019. So she is free now. She had filed a lawsuit against the New York State Department of Correctional Services, claiming to have been sexually abused by prison guards. One of those guards, a Lieutenant Glenn Looney, was arraigned on a second-degree charge of sexual abuse, and she did provide sample of his body stuff to show that she had been in contact with him, and she was actually awarded $10,000 as a settlement for the lawsuit. So she had her share of problems in prison, for sure. She is suffering from a brain tumor, and so she has her own share of problems today. She is still waiting for a decision on a lawsuit filed against her former appeals lawyer, saying that they did not introduce DNA evidence. So this is far from being settled. What happened to Paul Solomon? He was removed from his teaching position and moved into an administrative position with the Greenboro School District due to public outcry. because all his dirty little secrets about all the dirty little affairs came out. And so, kind of like the movie, it was kind of a bittersweet ending. Now, what this case did do is spawn several TV movies, books, and a lot of hype. And it's been one of the more juicy ones that people really like to dig into. I mean, hey, it's the Fatal Attraction Killer. Of course I was drawn to it. It's one of those things where don't dally in your marriage. Don't, because this could happen. Don't dally around when you're married if you want to prevent this from absolutely happening. But again, I've already stated kind of my theory on it. I think Warmus did it. I absolutely think they got the right person. But I think she was manipulated by Paul Solomon. I really do. And so I don't think he out and out asked her or told her to kill her, but I think he made it tough enough because he knew what kind of mental capacity he was dealing with, what would happen, and I think she was manipulated. So she would probably never hurt anyone if she hadn't met Paul Solomon. So that's just my theory. Allegedly. Don't come for me. But anyway, what do you think? Do you think she just did it of her own accord, that she already had it running through her veins and she just did it, or do you think she was manipulated? Also, do you think what happened to Paul Solomon was correct? Do you think more should have happened to him? Anyway, with that being said, this wraps up the Fatal Attraction Killer. I will be back soon with another video and another case. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Until next time, keep on crime.